Unmuting it.
We're unmuting.
We unmuted. See, it's recording. And then we go to, okay, so Dolly Curtis, you're admitting her.
Oh,
Ian
Dolly.
Pfeffer, you're admitting. Donna.
I can't believe Dolly got it.
Donna. My Donna.
We're not talking yet, Dolly. Do you hear us?
She has no audio. We have it.
Right, she's saying she's saying.
See, they're all muted, which is good.
Right,
Marlise. Oh boy.
it's Wayne.
Did you know that he was coming?
I invited him.
Ellen Blake. Do you know who that is?
No, but don't forget, it's Eastern Arts Council. It's coming too. Let me show it. More of this,
Oh, yeah. Way better than the dog. We'll show her this.
Yeah, show her that now.
Is it working? You like it? Can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you.
Wonderful. Let me make it a little louder here. Hi,
Harvey, you're looking good.
Harvey. Oh my God.
Wayne, feel free to interrupt at any point.
No, we're muting everybody.
We are not very good in this Zoom stuff, but we're learning and we're making progress.
Once we start, everyone's going to be muted, and then we'll have open comments. Hey!
No, that's absolutely fine. We just want to say hello. And I'm in the middle of making dinner, so I will let Wayne continue with you guys.
You must remember, I'm ancient. I'm a dinosaur. And all this stuff is a mystery to me. It's a good thing I have a young and beautiful wife.
Yeah.
Well, you're doing very well.
Yes,
So
so far, so good.
That's right. Hey,
Well-
Miriam.
Would you believe we've been doing this for 51 years?
Okay. No, it's other people now.
Yeah, I see.
Okay.
Crazy, crazy.
Okay, we will talk later, but
Okay,
Wayne will
definitely.
join you and we will mute ourselves. Goodbye.
I thought everyone was muted on entry. Because they were talking. And it's whoever is talking. You know, there's a gallery. See so far.
I hope you don't mind. I'm sitting in my easy chair. I'm too tired to sit at my computer.
No, you look so comfortable. I'm jealous.
And Latka's in my lap.
Oh,
Dolly, do you have audio?
she still seems to be working on it.
You hear me, Dolly? Yes? I don't hear you, but as long as you hear me.
Because she's muted. So you see here, mute. When
Yeah,
it's
I
got the
understand.
red there, that means they're muted.
Yeah, well, how come?
Because she didn't unmuted herself for a minute. All right. We'll just wait a few more minutes. It's not 7 o'clock yet, right?
Hi, you guys.
Hi, Donna.
Hi. Twice in one day I get to see you.
I know.
How
What a treat.
wonderful. And Harvey.
Well, I know you're one of his biggest fans.
Oh, yes.
Supporters.
I'm so excited about this. I knew you when. You know? We just began. It's so wonderful.
That's right. That's
It's such a
right.
lovely story, you know, how you began, actually.
And he will tell some of it. And his
Oh.
teacher, Wayne, is here with us tonight. So we'll hear about that as well, right? If you can see, Donna, look behind Wayne. If you see him, that's all his carvings in his kitchen, in his home in Chicago. Right? Beautiful.
Hello, David.
Oh,
Hello.
I'm so excited to know. Wonderful. And leather. Oh, it came and went a little.
Hi, Ian. How you doing?
Good.
Nice to see you, Ian. Come here, little one.
Oh, who's in my way?
So Miriam, we got a pup. This is our Oliver.
Oh,
Hello.
my guy's 12.
I know.
He's no pup.
And who is that man there?
Oh, Grandma
Grandma
B's here.
B. Oh my God, Harvey's mom. This is a first. She's a Zoomer.
Oh, how nice.
All right. Started.
I think we should wait 2 minutes.
Okay.
I think we'll wait 2 more minutes and then we'll get started.
Yeah, nobody's ever on time.
Okay, I think we might as well get started because the important people are here anyway. So I think I know almost everybody here except for Ellen Blake, and I don't see your face, so I might know you also. So I don't have to say too much about myself. This is called the Carver and the Rabbi. And what I'm going to do is talk about my carvings, since my wife says nobody understands what I do. So I'm going to try and explain the carving process, as well as look at the pictures that I've done. And then we'll ask the rabbi to give her comments about each one as well. Actually, what we're going to do today is we're going to look at 4 carvings from 2019 were called Abraham's Gifts, which are carvings in leather. And I asked the rabbi to pick 4 carvings. So we'll find out why she picked them, and then I'll talk about them. So the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to thank a few people. The most important person I'd like to thank is Dolly Curtis. For those of you that live in this greater Bridgeport community, Dolly has really been the fastest advocate of culture for the 30 years that I've been in town. She's got a radio show. She curates the Easton Library, art exhibits. And if you talk about culture, Dolly is really the go-to person. So Dolly, thank you so very much. And I'd also like to thank the staff at the library, Easton Library, where I'm having an exhibit right now through Christmas Day. So what you don't see on Zoom tonight, you can go to the Easton Library and see it, or you could go to my website, which is jewishcarving.com. So that being said, I think, what do I need to say about myself? Not much. I'm the carver. I think the rabbi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, most people know me too. I'm Rabbi Barbara, and Harvey's going to talk a little bit about my role and how he got started with his carving, so I won't steal his thunder. But I have been very proud of the work that he's done, and very happy for tonight for him to get a chance to show it and to explain it. And I will stick my 2 cents in when asked or necessary, but basically it's all about the carver. And so I'm going to kind of act as a little bit of an MC. So I ask everyone, the way we're going to do it is if everyone could mute themselves to start out. so that this way we don't
Hello, Ruth.
hear people's phones ringing or dishwashers going, whatever. And we are going to take some questions at the end. So if you have a question and if you're internet savvy, you can type it in the chat. There's a spot on the Zoom where you can actually put it in the chat. And if not, when we open it up at the end for questions, then people can ask their question at that time as well. So if you have, like anything, write it down or keep it in, for later. But I think it'd be easier just to let it flow and then, to go through the 4 pieces and then to go back. So let's start with Harvey. How did you become a carver, and what was your inspiration, your process for finding carving?
Well, in 2006, as some of you know, my dear wife Barbara decided to go to rabbinical school. And you probably know we worked together as well as living together. So we were really spending 24 hours a day together. But rabbinical school required a lot of study. And since Barbara's always been an A+ student, we decided that I needed to be away from her for 20 hours a week. So I needed to find out 20-hour-a-week hobby. And we immediately ruled out bongo drum playing because she needed a quiet space to study Torah. So in 2006, we had just come back from Italy, and I was very impressed with Murano glass. And so I got a couple of books on Murano glass and decided that to see if I was able to do it. But after reading the books, I quickly decided that having open flames in the house and a molten glass was just not a good thing to do because I wanted to practice my hobby in the bedroom. So I ruled out
In your
molten glass.
office, not our
and-
bedroom.
Excuse me, in my office. Our son Jeremy's room, because he was already out of the house. And then I realized, well, Murano glass is not going to work. And I remembered who just joined us, a good friend of mine, Reuben Pfeffer, when I was in high school, did some wood sculpting. It seemed to me like he had a big hunk of tree, and he had rasps and he had chisels and he worked in wood. And I said, well, wood sounds nice. Why don't I look at wood? So I got a book on wood. Every chapter was a different type of wood. And I read over the whole book, and I decided the type of carving that I wanted to do was called chip carving. And the reason I chose chip carving was very, very simple. It required only one knife. And since I was doing this in my bedroom, I didn't want to have sanding machines. I didn't want to have 100 rasps and files and hammers. I wanted something that I could do in the bedroom. I figured if it could take a knife, I could do it on the beach. So I said I was going to become a chip carver. So I started reading about chip carving, and everything I read referenced this teacher, Wayne Barton. And those of you that see the young-looking gentleman with the white beard, he's next to me on the screen. I don't know where he is on your screen, but if you look behind him, you can see all of the wood that he's sitting behind is carved. Wayne Barton is the preeminent chip carver, let's just say in North America. I don't want to say in the whole world because who knows what's happening in Europe. And he certainly is the father of chip carving in the United States and Canada. And when I researched carving, to be able to realize that you could learn something from the best person out there, maybe in the world, but certainly in North America, I said, well, that's what you want to do. There's a Jewish quote about finding a teacher. Rabbi, maybe you can elucidate on what that is?
Well, sure. In the Pirkei Avot, which is the wisdom of our fathers, part of our Mishnah, one of our sacred teachings, it says, make for yourself a teacher, acquire a friend, and judge all people fairly. But the part to make for yourself a teacher, the importance of finding a teacher in your life.
So I took a 2-day class with Wayne in 2006. Barbara was just in Mechina of rabbinical school. Mechina is the nursery school because she went in at age 55, not knowing Hebrew, not knowing anything about Judaism. So they stuck her in the nursery school. And I took a 2-day class with Wayne, and in 2 days, he taught me the basics of carving. Now, of course, you could learn the basics of anything. That doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it, but I learned the basics in 2 days. I picked up my knife. This is everything you're going to see tonight is done with this little knife, handheld knife. And I think the most important thing that Wayne gave me that day, which he's never done before, and I've taken classes with him for the last 20 years, is when the class ended, he said something like, by the power vested in me, I now declare you, and you was the 6 other people taking this class, artists. Okay? And, I took that to heart. And from 2006 on, I've considered myself an artist, which is a very, very interesting and enjoyable way to live your life as an artist. To see life through an artist's eyes is just, it's as pleasant as being married to a rabbi. The ability to come up with an idea and design it and execute it and have it look the way you want it to look, that's what an artist does. And that's what, that's the skill that I learned through Wayne and the mindset that I got through Wayne. So when I make fun of him the rest of the night, you'll know that I really love him. And he gave me something very, very, very valuable.
So why don't you tell us what kinds of things you started carving? Because I know that tonight we'll hear kind of an evolution of where you've gone over the years, but how did you, begin? And I know that Wayne was very proud of you because he shared this with me, because you started to design some of your own pieces and you went in the area of Judaism, which was, kind of your own path, right?
Well, I took this class with Wayne in June 2006. And my mother's 80th birthday, Grandma B is with us tonight, by the way. Happy birthday, Grandma B. She was 80. I must have taken the class with Wayne April or May. And at the end of May, I went down to Florida to celebrate my mother's 80th birthday. And I actually carved her a birthday card. So I immediately was able to start carving gifts for people. But mainly, I started carving Judaica. And there is a Jewish tradition about making, I don't know what it is. Rabbi, what's that Jewish tradition?
So there's a concept.
If you have a rabbi, you might as well take advantage
There's a
of it.
concept called Hidur Mitzvah, which is the case for beautifying objects. And so there's a question that's asked, because in the Torah, our sacred scriptures, the 5 books of Moses, it says, this is my God and I will glorify him. And so one of the rabbis asked, is it possible for us to add glory to our Creator? How would I do that? And so the answer was, I will glorify the way I perform my rituals. So if I'm going to celebrate Passover, I'm going to make a beautiful Seder plate. If I'm having Shabbat, I'm not just going to get some old, candles to use, but I'm going to use beautiful candlesticks. Or for my sukkah that we've just celebrated, you're going to beautify it, not just have the plain basic, but add beauty to it. And so I think that's what you began to do, was you beautified ritual objects. And maybe you'll tell a little bit about that.
If you would put the Seder plate on the screen, this Seder plate is not, no, actually it is in the Easton Public Library. It's not part of the,
not this particular.
It's not part of the exhibit, but they were nice enough to give me a showcase, and in it is the Seder plate. I'm going to use this once it comes up. Okay, everybody see that Seder plate? Yes, okay. So I'm going to use the Seder plate to teach you what I believe, what I learned from Wayne about design and what I learned about chip carving. So what is chip carving? Let's start with that. The rabbi says I should say what chip carving is not. It's not whittling. It's not carving ducks. It's really working on a flat surface and removing chips of wood. It's releasing the chips from the wood. And you do that again with this handheld knife. there are, if you look at this plate, I think there are basically about, people see this, this thing going around? There are basically about 3 different types of cuts that you can make. If you look at people, for let my people go, okay, the let my people go is, let me just say, there's negative carving and there's positive carving. Okay, negative carving is when you cut out the LET. Does everybody see what that is? Is there was a flat wooden plate, and I cut out the L, the E, and the T, and I created the word let. Okay. Now, positive carving is when you don't cut out what you want, but you cut around. So if you look at the egg, those of you that are familiar with the Seder plate, you know that there's an egg in the lower right-hand corner. I didn't cut that egg out. What I did is I cut out the space around the egg. So that's a positive carving, okay? Now, I don't know, when I started carving with Wayne in 2006, all we talked about was negative carving. So I'm not sure if he invented positive carving in 2006. I don't know when that came about, but it came out later on. But so there's negative carving and positive carving. Basically, there's 3 types of cuts here. Again, if you look at the line in people, okay, that takes 4 cuts. There's a top cut and a bottom cut. And the reason you cut on the top and the bottom is because of the grain. Anyone who's worked in wood knows that when your knife hits the grain pulls your knife. Similarly, so if you want that chip that you're removing to stop at the top of the P and at the bottom of the P, you have to make a cut at the top, you have to make a cut at the bottom, and then you make cuts on the 2 sides. And then if you're really good, that whole the left-hand side of the P is going to pop out. Now, it never does for me. I usually have to do everything twice. So to make that one little cut of the P, which is not even the whole letter, that's usually about 8 cuts. So if you talk about how long does it take to make this plate, look at all the different cuts. Okay, so that's a straight line, either a rectangle or a square, takes 4 cuts. If you're doing a triangle, that's 3 cuts. You'd have to cut the 2 sides, 1 cut, 2 side in the bottom, and that chip should pop out. Okay, if you're doing a circle, which is really the hardest cut in chip carving, because imagine you're taking your blade and you're going around one whole way on the inside of the circle, and then you're taking your blade and going one whole way around the outside of the circle. And again, if you're good, it should pop out and look good after 2 cuts, but it usually takes you about 10 cuts to get a nice circle.
And what kind of wood is it?
This is basswood. When we chip carve, we use the softest of the hardwoods. So 99% of chip carving is done with basswood, but I've also, which is another name for bass, is linden. I've also carved with a first quality pine, and I've also carved with butternut. And the reason we carved with them is the grain is straight, so it doesn't take away from the carving. And also it's the softest of the hardwoods. You don't need a hammer and a mallet. If there are any carvers out there or woodworkers, don't go trying to carve oak with just a handheld knife. You need a hammer, you need a rasp, you need a file. So that's what we use. Don't confuse basswood with balsa wood, where we make model airplanes. This is a hardwood. So let me talk about some design concepts, which we'll get back to. One is when I learned about design from Wayne, he said the object of art is you want to get the viewer to spend as much time looking at the piece of art as possible. And there are many ways to do that. One of them is to have contrasting geometric shapes, different size cuts. So if you look at this piece, it's round. But if you look at all of the objects on the Seder plate, they're in squares or rectangles. So those contrasting images catch our attention, correct? Similarly, if you look at the cuts, you have Let My People Go is one font, and then you have the fonts on the side are different fonts. And there's all kinds of decorations. You see there's a row around the top, there's a row in the middle, there's a row within the inner circle. So all those things catch your eye and want to make you look longer. And another very important design concept is you want a place where your eye can rest. You don't want anything to be too crowded. So there's plenty of space around Let My People Go. Rabbi, what do you think those wormy things are in between Let My People Go? Any thoughts about that?
The sea parting.
Exactly, the parting of the Red Sea. So again,
We didn't practice this part.
so one of the things I'm going to get back to over and over again tonight is design. This is a Seder plate. Anyone who's Jewish in the audience knows what's on the Seder plate. We know the charosas are there. We know the beets there. We know the parsley's there. But if you're going to design the Seder plates, you have to decide where you're going to put them, how are you going to put them, what words you're going to use. So I chose the motif of the Red Sea parting, of the Jewish people walking through the sea. That's my individual creativity. That's what I bring to this plate. Not just the parsley, not just the egg, not just the shank bone. So we're going to look at that on all the pieces as we go through them. Okay.
All right. So now we're going to start.
Oh, there's one other thing I want to talk about, and that is finishing.
Right.
Okay. Why does the dark letters and the carvings stick out from the wood as much as they do? That's got to do with the whole finishing product. Where I was deceived in chip carving when I read about it and it said you do the whole thing with one knife. Well, it is true, you do all the carving with one knife. But after you finish carving, as any woodworker will know, you then have to finish the wood. And finishing the wood is a multitasking project. So to finish this, the first thing you have to do is put 1, 2, or 3 coats of something on it like polyurethane or shellac. And what you want to do is you want to put them just on the flat surface. You don't want to put that polyurethane or shellac in the cuts, because you want the flat surfaces to be covered so that when the 4th step you do after the 3 steps of polyurethane, when you put a stain or a dye on that plate, okay, the outer surfaces are not going to take that stain, whereas the cuts, the Let My People Go, all the cuts, right? Everyone sees the cuts, everything that's dark now, those cuts have no polyurethane or shellac in them. So when you apply a stain or a dye to them, it absorbs them much, much greater. Hence, you have the contrast. So that's what finishing is. And then after you've done that, you then put another 2 or 3 coats of polyurethane on it to protect it, and then maybe a coat of wax on it. So finishing is a long, arduous, toxic process, which
I send them out to the garage for.
which, whereas my card says I've mastered carving, no one's ever going to say that I've mastered finishing. But finishing is a necessary part of carving. And another part of finishing is the smoothness to the hand. After I took that one class from Wayne in Pennsylvania, I took a lot of week-long classes for him in Vermont, in Ludlow. They have the Fletcher School for Arts and Crafts. And one year I had carved a 100th birthday plate, about this size, for Barbara's oldest friend, Janie Youngbear's mother, okay? And I decided I was going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So I took a trip up to Ludlow, where Wayne in the carving class was, on my way to Montpelier, where Janie and Janie's mother were, to present them with this plaque of, I had written happy birthday in Latin, because Janie's mother, Evelyn, aside from being a social worker and an inspiration for Barbara to get into social work, she also was an intellect. So saying happy birthday in Latin was right up her alley. So we stopped at Ludlow and we went to the class, and I had the plaque wrapped up, and Wayne said, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I came to say hello to you and the class, and I'm here to present this plaque to Barbara's friend's mother. And he said, well, let's see it. So I took the plaque out, and he liked the design. He liked the carving. And I said, what do you think about the finishing? Because finishing was always my weakest, the weakest part of the project. And he puts his hand on it and he rubs it all around and he says, not bad, which is a compliment for Wayne. And then all of a sudden he goes in the back room and he goes to this box that no one has ever seen before. And he pulls out he pulls out what I'm sure it was a rag, but it was a sandpaper rig he must have picked up in Switzerland somewhere. And I don't know if it was a 600 grit, for those of you that know about sandpaper. It was fine. It was somewhere between 200 and 600 grit. And he attacked this finished product with this sandpaper. And if there were 6 people in the room besides Barbara and myself, our eyes popped because we had never seen Wayne finish before. He had taught carving, but he talked about finishing, but we'd never seen him actually do it.
And you thought he was going to rub off all your carving.
I thought he was going to totally destroy the carving. I thought he was going to break all of the nice little triangles I made. And when he was finished and we felt it, it was so smooth. And from that day on, when it's time to sand my final product, I give it to the rabbi because I don't have the heart. I don't have the heart to take sandpaper and aggressively attack something which I just spent a month or 2 creating. So everything I've created since that day, the rabbi has done the final sand on, because she doesn't seem to mind attacking my projects as much as I do.
Right.
All right, moving on.
Yeah. So you started with the ceremonial pieces.
I started with ceremonial pieces.
And I know from there you moved on a bit.
That's right. I did nothing but ceremonial pieces and wedding presents and birthday presents and birth announcements for 5 or 6 years. And then I had the good fortune of going to the Arts and Crafts Museum in New York. And there was an exhibit called something like Carousel Horses. On page 2, I have it. There was an exhibit called Jeweled Horse, Gilded Lions and Jeweled Horses, the Synagogue to the Carousel. And this exhibit showed that the Jewish immigrants that came to America in the 1880s through 1920s, these were the men and women who had been carving the insides of synagogues, the Torah Aron, the ox, the lions, all the beautiful things in Europe in the synagogues, which unfortunately most were destroyed by the Holocaust. But luckily there are still pictures, and this book is wonderful how it preserves the whole history of European Jewish carvings. But these same gentlemen that came from Europe in the 1880s, they earned their living. They got hired carving. Oh, there's the plaque. If everybody, I don't know if you see, it says Evelyn 100, and underneath it says Ad Multos Annum, which means happy birthday in Latin. In any case, these gentlemen, and I say gentlemen because in those days it probably was mainly men, they got jobs carving carousel horses in Coney Island, in Boston. The 1880s was the heyday of Coney Island and carousels. And so the same people that were carving the lions in Europe all of a sudden come to America and they're carving these beautiful carousel horses. And I just loved the symbolism. The book went on to not only show the horses, but it also showed the lions, and it also showed paper cuts, Jewish paper cuts. And so I really got into that and spent the next 2, 3, 4 years getting away from just decorating plates and things to start using the motifs that I learned from this East European craftsman. And I actually had the pleasure of carving 3 arons, Torah arons. Rabbi, what's an aron?
So the aron is just a fancy word for the ark or the cabinet that houses the Torah scrolls. And of course, because the Torah is so holy and revered in the Jewish tradition, you don't want to just throw it in a closet. You want a dignified, very lovely ark or aron to house it in. And so Harvey carved 3 different ones.
Right, and so they're big. It's not a 12-inch plate. They're 2, 3, 4 feet large. So I got used to working larger, and I actually commissioned 24 by 24 inch pieces of basswood, as well as 30-inch round pieces of basswood, which you can see either on my website, Jewish Carving, or in the Eastern Public Library. And so I got into working big, and still my inspiration still came from Jewish sources and Jewish holidays. Although, You know, they're really universal. Some of the large pieces that I carved, which you can see on my website or in the Eastern Library, one of them was the Wisdom of Solomon. Now, that's a Jewish piece because we all know Solomon was the rabbi should be saying this, not me. Solomon was a king of Israel known for his wisdom, but every culture has wisdom. Culture, you know, has teachers of wisdom, Gandhi, Eleanor Roosevelt, Martin Luther King. So it's really universal. Another piece that I carved, which was on probably 2 feet by 2 feet, was the Revelation of Mount Sinai. Again, a very Jewish story where the Jewish people are camping out in Sinai and are given the 10 Commandments. But I think all civilizations at some point or another, people start thinking about, is their life greater than me? You know, is there a God? So while my inspiration was always Jewish stories, the motifs of what was carving were very universal. Okay, I think now I'd like to start looking at the pictures. Now I asked the rabbi to pick four pictures from Abraham's carving, which are leather carvings.
Now talk a little bit, if you would, how you got into leather, because that also was a transition. And I'll get the first one up.
Okay, the third stage of my carving after the lions and after the beautifying arts is I went to Beacon Dia and Mass Mocha, probably in 2014, 15 or 16. And I was amazed by installation art. And those of you that have gone to any of these installation museums, you walk into a room and there's a piece as big as the whole room. You have to walk around it. And I think that, you know, you talk about a piece affecting you. And I said, you know, I'd like to work bigger than 12 inches or even 24 inches. And I knew I couldn't do that with wood. It's too heavy. And, you know, I didn't have all I'm used to is working with is a knife. I didn't want to get into power tools. So I decided to look for another material that could be used, that I could just use a knife on, because I didn't want to get involved with all types of equipment. And I found this type of leather that's used for stirrups on horses. And so while it's only 3/16 of an inch thick, it is infused with wax. So it's pretty stiff. It's pretty stiff, so it'll take a cut. So what you're going to see today is carved leather using the same technique. The beauty about leather is there's no finishing whatsoever. And we all know how much I love finishing. All you have to do is when you're finished with it, they have a leather conditioner. You just put it on a sponge, wipe it off, get rid of the pencil marks. It spiffs it up. It looks really nice. And talk about circles. I already told you that carving circles was the biggest pain in ship carving. Well, carving a circle in leather is like cutting through butter. So there's a lot of advantages to leather. So what you see here is an 11 by 14 inch piece of leather, and it looks red to me. And obviously it was dyed by whoever created it. And luckily for me, when you cut out the chip, because again, this is the same one knife, you cut a chip of leather out. Underneath it is the natural color of the leather. And so there's no need to stain. I mean, all I did is remove pieces. Now, again, if you look at this, if you look at the word one, that's negative. You can see that's actually, I cut out all the letters in the word one. Do you see what that is? Miriam, you're shaking your head. Can you see that? So that one is a negative carving. And if you look at all of the statues in the 4 quadrants, they're not carved out. What's carved out is the space around them. So those are positive carvings.
Right.
Okay, so Rabbi, before I go on, why did you pick this piece?
Well, so Harvey calls his whole piece, and how many carvings are in it altogether?
I think there's 14 altogether now.
Abraham's gifts. And so to me, this stuck out because number one, it all started with Abraham. And I think whether we're Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, that everybody views Abraham sort of as the father, the beginning of monotheism, and the one, you know, really symbolizes that one God. In fact, right now I'm teaching a class at the JCCH in Harrison, and we're studying the roots of anti-Semitism. And it's very interesting because one of the roots way back in antiquity was that we had sort of the audacity to say to all the civilizations around us who had many, many gods, that we were going to only worship one God. And so, so I picked it for that oneness. And I also picked it because it symbolized the whole story with the idols, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I think, in these times of COVID especially, we're looking for ways to be one rather than the division of everyone. So it spoke to me in the joining together rather than dividing of people.
Okay, so this is the fifth carving in the book Abraham's Gifts. The first three were creation. The fourth is Adam and Eve. And then the next three, 5, 6, and 7, or no, I said this is 5, yeah, have to do with Abraham. So this was the first one, and it's called Abraham Destroys the Idols. Now, I remember way back when I was a Hebrew school teacher, I had a coloring textbook when we were talking about Abraham, and it had this picture of all these idols lined up on the shelf, and Abraham broke them before he left his father's house. Rabbi, can you tell us a little about that story from the Torah?
So it's interesting because many of us know that story and we think it comes from the Torah, but it actually is not in the Torah. It's in what we call a midrash. And what is a midrash? It's sort of a fill-in that the rabbis do of things that are missing in the Torah. When they read it, they read the text, maybe something is inconsistent, maybe something's left out, maybe there's a question. And so obviously it bothered the rabbis. Why did they pick Abraham? What was it about Abraham? And so they kind of came up with this story, which has followed us ever since. So I found a copy of the story in the Midrash Says, which is a text that we use. And it's very short. I'm just going to read one little part. It says that Terach, who was Abraham's father, and Abraham at the time was called Abram. He wasn't yet Abraham. That comes later when God changes his name. But he had a business where he sold idols. And young Avram one day had to fill in for his dad. His dad had an errand to go on, and he asked Avram to watch the store. And so a woman comes in and says thieves had broken into her house during the night and stolen all of her idols. And Avram says, well, if your gods weren't able to protect themselves from the robbers, how do you expect them to protect you? And the woman said, you're right. But whom shall we serve? And Avram said, the creator of heaven and earth who made you. So the woman left and she didn't buy an idol. So then another woman came in. He's not a very good businessman, right? With a bowl of flour as an offering for the gods. And Avram took an axe and smashed all the idols except for the biggest one. He placed the axe against the big idol. And when his father, Terach, returned and saw all this mess, he said, what happened here? And Abram said, I'll tell you the truth. While you were away, a woman brought some flour, and each god said he wanted to be the first to take the offering. And the biggest idol was insulted. So he took the axe and he broke all the others. And Terach said, well, that's nonsense. You know very well that idols don't speak and they don't move around. And Avram said, is that so? Pray think about what you just admitted. Then why do you serve them? And so it was more than just breaking the idols, but it was Avram making a point that these idols made of wood or stone or metal, whatever they were made from, they couldn't do anything like God could do.
Okay, so then let's talk about the designing and the creative process for a moment. So I decided that I wanted to do a carving about Abraham destroying the idols. So I think
That's like saying if God is
Okay, so I think the first thing you need to do when you're designing is what's the point that you want to make?
Right.
Okay, what is the point that I wanted to make, and how do you want to make it? What symbols are you going to use to make the point? I mean, is the point, are you going to use Avram's father? Are you going to put the axe there? You're going to have the broken idols? Are you going to have Avram there? You're going to have God? How are you going to represent God? How are you going to represent Avram? How are you going to do it? How big are the idols going to be if you're going to use idols? So my first drawing of this, my first attempt when I first conceived of the of this piece was I had the word echad, which is one for Hebrew, in the center, and I had all different shaped idols going around the circle around the world echad, around the word echad. There was big idols, there were small idols, and they were just almost floating in space as a circle. Was my original conception of this piece. But that was my original conception. What that said to me is I wanted to emphasize the point that there's one God, and that one God is central, and the idols are very fragile. The idols are not what we should be into. So after looking at designing, this piece here really is a nod to classic chip carving. If you could think of this if it was the rabbi's birthday, if in the middle where one is, it said "Happy Birthday, Barbara," and if her favorite flower was a rose, because chip carvers love flowers. Okay, whether they, if you're Swiss, you like the Edelweiss. If you're Texas, you like the yellow rose of Texas. So that if you think of that as "Happy Birthday, Barbara" in the middle, and then a whole bunch of roses.
I like irises better.
I should have known that. A whole bunch of irises symmetrically around it. That's what I did here. Okay. Now let's look at the components that I talked about with the Seder plate. So again, I already said the one is negative. The idols themselves are positive. You have the rectangular piece of leather. But then that rectangle is divided into 4 squares with a rectangular center, and look at the flow of the idols. I mean, I think that's very, very interesting, the way that I was able to capture that symmetrical flow. Now,
where's the idol?
The idol, can everybody see the idol? Just for your
right.
Okay, there's that one idol in the middle, and what I did. Since I have this, my brother has a name for this issue, but it's obviously some medical condition. When I close my eyes, I can't see anything. Now, everyone's going to say, I can't see when I close my eyes either. But I've been married to my dear wife for 31 years, and I'm an artist. If I close my eyes and you told me to draw her face, I couldn't do it. Whereas I know many times in class when I go to Wayne and say, Wayne, I want to draw an elephant, he would pick up a pencil and draw a perfect elephant. So he was, obviously some people are able to see within their mind and come up with it. I can't do that, so I go to Google Image. And what I did is I Googled idols, and I saw 500 different shapes of idols. So surprise, surprise, I decided I liked the Astarte idol, who was really the god of fertility and sexuality. What a surprise, huh, Rabbi? So what I did is I came up with one big whole idol, and that's the one that you see. And I actually drew it on cardboard, cut it out, and then drew the 4 in. And then I hand drew her broken pieces all over the rest of it. Now, this piece of leather is only 3/16 of an inch wide. So if the depth, I'm sorry, is only 3/16 of an inch. So when you're designing on something that thin, you cannot make any cut too big because if any cut too wide, because if the cut is wide, you're gonna have to go deep to cut it. Because again, if you're looking at the letter 1, and you have to do a top cut, a bottom cut, and 2 side cuts, okay? If you cut too deep because you're going wide, you're going to cut through the leather. Now, you might want to cut through intentionally, but in this case, I did not want to cut through. So if you look at all the cuts, really the cut in the word one and the line surrounding it are the thickest cuts you have, which is probably about a 16th of an inch. So when I designed this piece, you could see nowhere in this piece is there any cut more than a 16th of an inch, because that's all the leather would allow. So when you're designing, you have to think about things like, what are you going to put in there? But is it going to be positive? Is it going to be negative? And you have to come up with a way to do it. Now, again, I like the symmetry of this. I like this piece. I think it's a very, very complicated piece. I'm not sure if there's enough place to rest your eye on that. Would be the only thing I might say about it. It might be just a drop too busy, but
All right.
I like the piece.
All right. You ready for the next one?
Okay, the next one.
So talk a little bit how then you got branched into Christianity.
Okay, put it on the board. I up until this Abraham's gift, I had only carved Jewish subjects, and even though I always felt that the motifs I used were universal. I already talked about Solomon, and I talked about Revelation. But as an artist, we create because there's something in us that tells us to create, but we also want people to see it. And it's not bad to have people want to buy things either, but we want people to look. We want people to look at our work as well. And I felt if I would expand away from just Jewish work, I would have a greater audience. And the Abraham was a wonderful vehicle into that, because all right, so now I have Christian pieces, and in a year from now I'll have Islamic pieces also. So I've gone from 12 million people in the world to about 2 billion people in the world that could theoretically be interested in my pieces. And I, it's.
And how did you know the themes in Christianity? I know in Judaism, you're pretty well versed, but what did you do to learn about the Christianity pieces?
Well, I went to the library and I took out every book on Christian art that they had. And basically there were a few themes. I mean, as a Jewish man, I knew about the nativity, but I didn't know about the Annunciation. I didn't know about the lamentation. So what I did is I looked at all of these pictures and I saw what the main themes that I believed were in Christianity. And I came up with 5 pencil drawings, 11 by 14 inches. And then I went and visited 2 people I thought were knowledgeable in it. I visited a Father Al, that worked at St. Vincent's Hospital with Barbara. And I visited Tony Cesarna, who was thank you. Tony Cesarna, who was the former president of Sacred Heart University, which is a Christian university. And I went and spent time with them. I showed them the pictures and I asked them if I was in the right ballpark. And they were generous enough to tell me I was in the right ballpark, to give me ideas about symbolism. I refined my carvings, and I came up with this. Rabbi, why did you pick this picture? Again, the rabbi picked these pictures. This is of the 14 carvings, this is the next to the last. There were 5 Christian carvings, and this is the 4th one. No, this is the 3rd one. This is the 3rd of the 5 Christian carvings. Okay.
So, when I thought of tonight, that kind of the progression, and it's weird because we're going to go back to an Abraham piece after, but I was thinking about Abraham being sort of a trailblazer and being really the first to stick his neck out and say, this is the one God. And I think of Jesus the same way, that in his time, he was really going against the grain of the Pharisees at the time. It was the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, and his whole message of love. I think, in this time of COVID, Jesus's message to love thy neighbor as yourself, all the religions have a form of that sort of golden rule. But I think we have seen, especially now, that how important it is to reach out to our neighbors, to check in on the sick and the elderly, and and I know in our case, we've never been closer to our 4 neighbors on our cul-de-sac than through COVID, because that's who we have to socialize with, to come to the backyard. You know, we're not traveling too far. And so I think the whole idea of, you know, being conscious about your neighbor and that we're all in this together. And so that's why I picked this. That's the message that jumped out at me.
Okay, so this was, I did 8 Jewish pieces, and this was my 3rd Christian piece. So it was 11 pieces into it. Each piece was taking me 1 to 2 months by the time I came up with the idea and drew it and practiced, because I always try to expand my horizons and come up with something that I've never carved before. So actually, I spend more time with a pencil than I do with a knife. And I actually spend more time with practice leather or practice wood than I do in the final product. So it was taking between a month and 2 to complete every piece. And I was frankly tired. And I said to myself, I need a piece that I could just knock out quickly. No new concepts. Boom, 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 boom. I don't want to spend a month. I want to get through this piece and get on to the next one. And I had a piece of leather that wasn't up to par. If you look at this piece of leather, if you look in the right-hand corner, you see all those marks. Now, we all know leather is the hide of a cow, and it's not uniform. I said before that the leather is 3/16 of an inch, and it's firm. Well, that whole right-hand side and much of the top was just very flappy. It was thin, it was flappy, and you can't really put a knife in it and get a straight cut. You look at some of those cuts on the stones,
Right.
and you could see that they're far from perfect, especially the right-hand corner.
Right.
I mean, if my teacher Wayne saw that, if I was doing that on wood, he would have something to say about that. So I needed to come up with something very, very simple, something with a lot of straight lines, something I could do with my eyes closed, and that's what I came up with. So the basic concept was this is called Jerusalem 33 AD, and those are the walls of Jerusalem. And what I conceived of it was that what's happening with the people. This is a thought piece. The people inside the walls, the Roman authorities, you know, they're sitting there drinking their wine, having a good time, feeling very safe. The walls are thick. The doors are barred, the windows are gated, and you know, life is good. But what's happening outside? You know, what's happening outside is Jesus's love, and they didn't necessarily see the changes that were taking place. So I liked it. So this is graffiti on the walls of Jerusalem on a throwaway piece of leather. And, you know, again, there's a lot of nice space for your eyes to rest, right? One of the other things, I went back to Ludlow in 2017 with my 20 drawings, my 2011 by 17 drawings. I wanted to show them to Wayne and get some advice before I started carving. Because I came up with the idea in the spring of 2017. Barbara and I went to Tampa St. Pete on vacation. And we went to the St. Petersburg Botanical Gardens. And in the room where you buy the tickets, hanging from the ceiling, they had 4 or 5 what looked like aluminum, pieces of aluminum that were probably about 20 feet long by about 1 foot wide. And there were etches of plants on them because it was a botanic garden. I looked there and I said, wow, that's what I want to do. I want to do something that's long and big and that hangs from the ceiling. And so that's where this idea came from to do, well, it's a book now, so it folds up because it's easy to transport. But when you open it up, it's a very long. So, you know, it's where do these ideas come from? You know, it came from the Botanic Garden at St. Pete. But in any case, what was I just talking about before?
You went to Wayne. And
yeah. So I brought my 20 carvings to Wayne.
The
ideas, and I said I have this idea for a 20-piece carving. So he says, all right. He calls he was teaching a class at that time. He says to the class, okay, you know, I have a distinguished guest, and he's going to show us some pictures and explain them. And one by one, I take out these 20 pieces of paper and I show them to the class and I explain my ideas. And, you know, I'm waiting for these words of wisdom from the master. And I might be wrong, but here's what I remember he says. He says, you got a lot going on there. Make sure your borders are simple. So I think this piece, you can see the border is pretty simple. What do you think, Wayne? It's a simple border, I would say. But I like the contrast of this piece compared to the earlier piece we looked at. The earlier piece, you had
with the idols.
the idols were soft and broken and fragile, whereas the one godness was strong and firm. In this piece, you have the walls, the stones of Jerusalem, which are supposed to be firm, and actually they're weak. And the spray graffiti, Jesus is love, the emotion of love is what's strong. So you really have the flip-flop. And I think that's I like that. I like that concept about how I flip those two things. I don't think this is technically a good carving, but I think you look at it and you know what's going on, and it captures your imagination.
Right.
So
it's a statement.
it's a statement. It's a statement piece. All right,
All right.
Rabbi. This is called Abraham's sacrifice, and this is the second of the Abrahamic pieces. It's the sixth piece in the book, the sixth chapter in the book, and it's called Abraham's sacrifice.
So people are aware of the story of the binding of Isaac, or the sacrifice of Isaac, or Akedah, as we refer to it in the Hebrew. And in the story, you know, God tells Abraham to sacrifice his son, the son that he's waited all these years to get. Sarah was like, his wife Sarah was in her 90s before this child came. And now all of a sudden, you know, the boy is a little bit older, and God says, I want you to take him and sacrifice him, bring him to this place I'm going to show you, and you're going to bind him up and you're going to sacrifice him. Now, we know that in Islam, they believe it was Ishmael that they sacrificed. But so the story is very central in Judaism and very complicated. You know, what's it all about? What kind of God would give a test like that? Was God testing Abraham to see if he'd really do it? Was Abraham testing God to see if God would really make him do it? You know, and there's a lot of commentaries written on that. But what always appeals to me about the story is the whole question of faith. And what is faith, and what would we do for our faith, and what are we always being tested on? And, you know, I think right now we know in America, the statistics are that a lot of people are leaving their religions. There's the rise, the largest religion in the US that's rising right now is called the nones, N-O-N-E, people with no religion. And so, you know, you have that juxtaposed, you know, positioned with this thing on such strong example of faith. And so that's what appealed to me. And I think, you know, in the time of coronavirus, I've been very interested to look at the Pew studies on, are people actually going back more to their faith during this time? Are they, we know people, you know, up until recently weren't able to even attend churches, and most synagogues are not open, you know, in person. But I know in the Jewish community, it seems a lot more people are tuning into the Zoom services, and it'll be interesting if once we're back in person, if people will keep up with that, or they'll go back to not attending and not being, you know, that connected. The studies show that people are more praying a little bit more and a little bit more connected to their faiths, but not necessarily only to organize things. There's more people doing yoga and more people meditating, and I think looking for ways to self-soothe during these very difficult times. And so, you know, the whole question, has coronavirus, you know, deepened your faith, your spiritual practices, your connections? This piece sort of spoke to me about faith, and that's why I chose it.
Well, that was good. That was good. So, the question that gets asked, we all know the story of the binding of Isaac. How do you represent that? What do you want to say? What pieces do you do if you're going to be an artist and present it either in embroidery or in a dance or an oil painting or in a chip carving? What pieces do you take? So it's interesting. When I first did the drawings, and probably the picture that I showed Wayne and the carvers at Ludlow, is I had the knot, and I had
This is
that is the knot, okay, representing the binding of Isaac. And in the four corners, I had a shofar, Rabbi.
which is a
Shofar.
ram's horn. People know that we blow on Rosh Hashanah, and it really is to remind us of this story.
And then in the top and the bottom, I had logs with fire on them. So interestingly enough, I kept the same concepts. Abraham's not there, Isaac's not there, the knife's not there. Okay, I kept the fire, but I changed it from logs to a circle. Everybody see the circle was fire. I kept the eternal knot, and instead of the shofar, I actually used the ram. Now, I design around space. I find that the space gives me structure. So I don't necessarily have a whole piece drawn on paper or a whole piece totally practiced and carved to my liking before I start carving. Now, I'm not sure how other people would do it, but I like to start working on a project and then see what I'm left with and then design for the space. So the main motif in this project for me, I've been carrying around the idea of an eternal knot for 10 years. Chip carvers use the Irish knot in Jewish paper cuts, and on gravestones they use the eternal knot. It's infinity, never ending. And so I wanted to use the knot, which is the binding of Abraham, and that's what's in the middle. So what I did is I designed a knot, and you could look at that knot. You see, there's no beginning and there's no end. I love the over under of it. It really appealed to me. So I wanted that to be the main part of the carving, and I designed that knot to be as big as possible, given my space, which was, I'm working with 11 by 14. So I designed the knot, I practiced it, I carved it, and then I saw what I was left. And then, since I was committed to a fire motif, I didn't think the logs in the four quadrants made much sense. And again, Wayne came back to me with contrasting geometric shapes. So I made the fire in a circle. Now, if you look at the circle, what you notice is it's not a complete circle, because the knot is so big, because that's what I wanted to highlight. Now, I don't think you lose anything by not having the whole circle. If I had that whole circle there, if I had to draw that whole circle there, it would be the size of the inside circle, would be the outer edge. And then if you take another 3/4 of an inch, I'd have no room for anything else, right? There would not be enough room in the middle. So again, I made the circle as big as I could make it, but it worked around the knot. And then I was left with this square in the middle. With what was I going to do in that square in the middle? But I liked the idea of being focused, knowing I had to come up with something that was going to fit right in that middle. So I went to Google and I looked up a lot of different pictures of rams and decided it's really too small for a whole body. And I decided to come up with just the head stuck in the thickets. And it works. I mean, you have the rectangle, you have the circle, then you have a rectangle, then you have a circle. It's very, very interesting. A lot of room for your eyes to rest, yes. And I think that of all the pieces up until the last few, this was my favorite piece, because it's just so simple. You look at it and I think you get it.
Oh, and to me, those eyes stand out on the ram. And I think, if we know the story, the ram is hiding in the thicket while this is all happening. And those eyes, were sort of haunting me there, of him watching the whole thing. How is it going to unfold? And we know that Isaac, was watching the knife come down, and there was a lot of things that weren't talked about, that weren't said. And so something about those eyes really get to me. So it's beautiful.
Exactly.
All right, let's go to the last piece and then
The
we'll
last piece,
have some time for questions.
the last piece of the night is the next to the last piece. This is called the Lamentation in Christianity. And the Lamentation is Jesus coming off the cross, typically being held by Mary. I really dreaded having to carve this piece, not because of its Christianity, but because as a Jewish carver who was specializing in Jewish motifs, I never carved bodies. Rabbi, what's the
well, we
the
know
issue with-
in the Torah, the second commandment says that, and I'm just paraphrasing it. Well, here it is from Exodus: "You shall have no other gods beside me. You shall not make for yourself a sculpted image or any likeness of what is in the heavens above, or the earth below, or the water under the earth." So this whole idea of not making a graven image. And the reason really is because of idol worship. It goes back to that concept that it was feeling that if you had an image, that a two-dimensional or even three-dimensional image, that could be something you would then worship.
Okay, so anyway,
I want to pick this too.
oh yes, thank you, Rabbi. Why did you pick this as the fourth piece that we'd be showing tonight to our distinguished audience?
So and Harvey will talk more about, the feeling of it, but I felt that of all the carvings he's ever done, this portrays emotion. And that was something that you hadn't really done that much. And maybe because it is people, I don't know, but it's got this emotional feeling. And the name, even the Lamentation, I think about, especially in these times, what is a lament? It's like an expression of grief, and it's often portrayed in music and in poetry and in art forms. And it's like a response to sadness or evil in the world. And right now, I think we're all in a place of lamenting in many ways. And yet, being the optimist I always am and the positive person, we have a beautiful teaching in Psalm 30 that says, "You turned my lament into dancing." And so somehow, that was when I thought about this as the story, what was happening here and what followed, and in our own lives, hopefully that a lament will be turned into dancing.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So I'm just looking at this piece now. This whole piece is done in the positive. Okay, nothing is there as carved out. Everything that you see because of the space carved around it, right? So in this piece, I went back to my true nature of procrastinating and doing what I liked and then seeing what I had left in terms of space. And I knew I wanted to do the background. I knew I wanted to portray either the blood or the tears. And you can see on the left side, the tears go to the left, and in the center, they go straight down, or the blood, the right side, they go to the right. So I had a lot of fun with that. So I did the entire background with the cross. And I think if this piece has a shortcoming, I think the word is maybe the crosses should be a little longer, but I wanted to leave myself enough space to carve a figure. So you can imagine I have the cross and I have the entire background carved with this space in the middle, not knowing I knew what I was going to put in there. I knew I had to put in there Jesus and Mary, but not knowing how I was going to do it. All the books I looked at, all of the Google images I looked at were basically paintings. And paintings are really just not conducive to chip carving. When I go to Google Image, I either go to tattoos, I really like, pen and ink drawings, I really like, stained glass, I really like, because all of them are lines, and they fit chip carving very well. But a painting of Mary holding Jesus is very difficult for me, at least, to translate to chip carving. And I really was struggling with, what am I going to put in there? And finally, I came upon this one page with about 20 drawings on it, pen and ink drawings, and it said that they were traditional Hispanic Christian symbols. And I just fell in love. It was Mary holding Jesus, and I fell in love with the two faces on each other. I'm sure you can all see that, the two faces, they almost form a heart. And I looked at trying to draw Mary and Jesus, but look at the shape that I left myself. And I said to myself, what am I going to do? Have Jesus' legs coming there, the whole thing? You know, it just wasn't going to work. And I saw it in many books. Mary Magdalene was included along with the Virgin Mary. So I said, aha, I'm going to put the two Marys there with Jesus. And I really liked the flow that the dresses, because, you know, this was in the early 0 centuries. They weren't wearing bikinis. I really like the flowing dresses, how that adds, you know, and it creates the contrast that we talked about to the cross. Roman feeling, your rabbi says.
No, the Jesus, I don't know, something about
well,
that.
Jesus in the
Reminds me,
loincloth.
Yeah.
And I like that, and I actually like that blank space. Now, you know, some people might have tried and fill that blank space above Mary Magdalene in.
This here.
This space right here.
Oh.
Okay,
Yeah.
you see where Jesus and Mary's head would be on the other side of the cross. That space, as Wayne would say, I just think it's a nice place for your eyes to rest.
Mhm.
So I didn't fill that space in, and and as the rabbi said, the good rabbi, I think this piece really portrays an emotion, which I like. So I think you know, this. Let me just say something about the human body. You could tell that those are 3 humans, but they're not really a human representational. The last piece, which we're not showing tonight, is the resurrection. And in that piece, I actually carved the figure of Jesus. So, but the rabbi didn't pick it. We're not showing it. You'd have to go to the Easton Library or go to jewishcarving.com, and you can see how I actually did a body. So on that note, we are done with the talking about the 4 pieces that we chose for you. If anybody,
Yes, so I think now if you have a question or a comment, just unmute yourself and go for it.
well, Miriam asked, how do you get the black in? I think we answered that. That's part of the finishing process, part of the staining. So we don't have to go.
Well, no, she still doesn't understand it.
No, I don't.
You don't understand it. You do understand it. No, you don't.
No, I do not.
Well, you know, again, it's a 2-step process. By first putting something like polyurethane or shellac against
I
the
understand.
surface, but not the cuts, okay? That prevents all of the surface, the background, from absorbing stain. You understand that?
Yeah, but
If
how
you look-
does it get black?
Okay, so you put the polyurethane on the
Which
surface,
is
but
like
not
clear,
the cuts.
Right.
Then you take
Okay.
black paint or black stain.
That's what I
Or
wondered. Okay.
brown.
Or brown or yellow or orange, and you paint
Got it.
that into the cuts.
That's
Now,
what I
because
thought.
those
Okay.
cuts are not treated with polyurethane,
Got it.
they
got
pick it up
Okay.
much more than the outer part. So
Okay.
that's a dark brown stain, Miriam, is
Oh,
what
okay.
okay?
I have another question.
You're
Sure.
on.
I couldn't figure out, I have trouble with spatial relationships, so
Me
you'll
too.
understand this question. I could not find the knot in that next to last picture. The
Okay.
Akedah. I could not find the knot.
Okay, well, what did you see in that picture? Do you
The-
remember?
The square and the
square-
fire
Yeah, that square was
and the ram, but I could
that
not
square was
find
an
the
eternal
knot.
knot. In other words, it had no beginning and no end. If you look at it, if you look at that as if it was a string, it just goes around and around and
Oh.
around, never ending. So to me, that was the binding of Isaac or Ishmael.
Oh,
Okay,
thank you.
so that's an eternal knot, is what that is.
Oh, I was looking more literally for a knot.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Ian, are you raising your hand?
No,
Dolly, did you have something you wanted to ask?
She's mute.
You're
Dolly,
Dolly,
you're
you're
muted. You have
muted.
to unmute yourself.
Deborah,
Am
my
I?
my lovely sister-in-law, Deborah, do you have something you wanted to ask? If you do, you have to unmute.
Unmute yourself, Deborah.
Maybe she's just waving to say she's there.
Oh,
Can I ask one more?
Hey, Harvey, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, this is Deborah. I just wanted to say a couple of things. I was really so impressed with all of your carving because I always tell my clients, when you're looking at a picture, some people just look at a corner in the picture. You have to look at the whole picture to appreciate it. And with all of your carvings, I saw the whole picture and I felt that emotion that you put in it. And I was really impressed with it. I love the one with the number 1 on it.
Yeah,
And when, yes, and when we go back and we talk about the picture of the wall in Jerusalem and Jesus, and you saw those rays coming out of
yeah.
Jesus is love. And then at the last one, the picture of Jesus coming from the cross, I could actually see the face of everyone, but there was so much emotion in there. You felt that emotion of love and sadness all at the same time. I just thought you did an unbelievable job on all of this. And I'm not saying it because I'm related to you and I love you. I'm saying it because I like to appreciate things like this. And it was absolutely amazing. Okay.
Beautiful.
Let me ask a question, because another thing that my teacher always said was that you should be able to see the artist in the painting. You really want the artist to come through. And I never really quite understood that. But is that what you're trying to say? I mean,
that's exactly what I'm trying to say. I could see your emotions and your feelings in each one of your carvings. And I said it when I was muted to Mom and Mark, that I see his emotion and his feelings and his thinking and a lot of his carving. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
the next time the good rabbi says I have no emotions, I can call my sister-in-law Deborah.
Well, that's a different story now. Okay,
That's a horse of a different color.
that's a different
We're
story.
dangerous when we get together, Deborah and I, married to the 2 Paris men, right?
That's right. So we have
Somebody
to
else
stick together.
Somebody else had their hand up.
I think Donna.
Donna, did you want to say something?
Oh,
And
yes.
Holly.
I have to say, this was just absolutely marvelous. I have so many thoughts going through. First of all, the story, Barbara, you beginning to become a rabbi, and Harvey, you having the time suddenly to create. You have both used that time so extraordinarily. And Harvey, you have matured, you have so morphed in what you're doing, from the beginning. Because everything is wonderful. Lindsay has this beautiful piece that you made for her, and I was so taken with it back then, but to see what you're doing now, and your Judaism also is comes through in such an incredible way. You're so knowledgeable as well. I've always thought that that you had so much, even when you could put all of your art together in the past, what I was seeing, but this was just extraordinary, another level, really, and just
and I think, Donna, why I was happy he wanted to do this and had the opportunity is so often you just look at something, walk by and say, oh, that's nice. Like this summer he had an exhibit in the town green, and it was very disheartening because people were eating ice cream cones and, running after their kids, and they sort of just walked by, nodded their head and kept walking. And I think, that this was such a wonderful opportunity for him to really explain. And I learned a lot tonight, even
Yes, I mean,
the thought behind it and
expectations.
what things represented and how he came up with the
Exactly.
ideas. Because, you know, even I've looked at the stuff and sometimes like walked by and it said, oh, that's nice, you know, but
That's nice, dear.
That's
Yeah.
nice. Yeah. I think, Peter, did you have your hand up?
Dolly.
I did. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So, well, Harvey, you know, we've been blessed to see a number of your works in progress and the various stages and finish and stuff. And I just find the whole leather book concept pretty spectacular, reminiscent of like triptychs, you know, where you would have different pieces that would,
Yes.
you know, but this was, I don't know how many, was there 14, 16 pieces there?
14 so far, yeah.
Yeah, and the idea of adding Islam to there, I mean, do you know how many more pieces have you gotten to that point yet? And
Yeah, well,
are they going to be added to it so it will be one
Yeah,
long piece?
I'm gonna do five in Islam, and then I'll do a 2-page conclusion. Don't ask me, I have no idea what that's gonna be, but so I'm thinking about 7 more pieces in total.
And when we
And
visit
that'll be-
you in Vermont, Peter, and Janie, my oldest friend and her wonderful partner, we can brainstorm. What are we going to do with this book? How do we get it out there in the world, right?
Yeah. Well, it looks great on your website. I've been cruising your website in the background here the whole time. So
Thank you. Dolly, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah. Oh, Dolly.
Dolly,
Oh.
you're on mute, Dolly.
Well, she's still on mute.
You're still on
While she
mute.
figures it out. Howard, go ahead.
I just, I'm just so impressed on how much you matured over the years from the time that you started with the Mr. and Mrs. Diane plate.
I've only matured as an artist, not as a man, Howard. Don't worry too much.
But I,
That's right. You have an original from way back when, right, Howard?
absolutely. Yeah, I remember when you started with the wood chipping, and I remember when you first started on your first piece of leather. And you've come one hell of a long way, and tonight made me appreciate it even more. I look
And
for
that's
you-
coming from an artist. So one artist to the next. Howard also later in life, we discovered he's an amazing watercolor painter,
Doesn't
right?
matter. You have a key that you don't use anymore.
I just think it's a credit and a
Really?
congratulations.
One key laying around here.
I don't know if someone's
That's
talking.
so
Becky, did you have your
No, there's
hand up?
nothing in there. Tim, there's nothing.
Ruben,
These are organized. Please
Showing us,
don't.
go ahead.
Am I
Can you
muted?
see the bottom of this thing? No.
Nope,
I don't
you're
think-
good.
I'm good.
What do you need a key
Have
for?
I been on?
It's for an art project. I need a key.
Have you heard us talking?
No, you're unmuted now.
Oh, okay.
I never changed it.
We're
Um,
muted.
Oh,
I just wanted to share this beautiful tzedakah box that Harvey carved.
Yeah, look at that. Mm.
So that is one of the very few pieces carved out of butternut, as opposed to 99% of my pieces are basswood or linden, but that is butternut. And I think I might have made one piece out of pine, but very, very few pieces. So that's very nice, Ruben. I'm glad that that was a
Now-
wedding. Yeah.
wow.
So does,
Dolly, okay, you're on.
no, am I really? Okay.
You're on.
So, Harvey, I have to think about a lot of what you said, because I too have been watching this over a decade. I didn't realize it was only 16 years. You know, you could have made up your mind looking at those books at the craft museum or wherever. It doesn't mean you would have had inside of you all of what came out now. Remember when you said I tried to think of something to do which could take 20 hours a week? That's very, you know, how
A
you
quiet hobby, Dolly.
and you didn't want too many tools. You
Correct.
could never have blown glass, all right? I have to tell you that, because that's 2,000 degrees. Murano, no, it is. Jason blows.
No.
You could never. You have to do that in another building, not in your bedroom. Okay, so do you realize that all of this crosses with reverse painting on glass? Because I have interviewed, you know, the finest reverse painter, Milton Bond, and what you're doing also overlaps with molas, MOLAS from South America, where fabric is used in layers, and then they work down the layers. They do the negative and positive in the embroidery. They make clothing with the whole bodices. So every time you would say things, I was thinking of these other art forms that use the similar but different materials to come up with these designs. So reverse painting on glass, it's very hard to do. Very.
Thanks, Charlie. Wayne, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I would, Harvey. You know, what I'd like to tell you, it's really great to see your work again, and your progression. The thing that
If people, when they're
think-
not on, if you could remute yourself, Wayne, don't mute yourself, but everyone else, so we don't get the background noise. Thank you.
you can hear me, right?
I hear you, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a heart attack. Yeah.
Deborah, I hear you also, though.
The thing that all comes through with each one of these pieces and all of your work, that it shows how much more thought and work goes into it before you actually execute. And you and I've had long conversations on this. It is true. Any piece that you're working on.
Deborah, mute yourself.
I'm hearing static.
The picture, but I think she can speak.
Sorry, Wayne, go ahead.
Yeah, that there's so much more work and time put into the actual work. It is quite minimal compared to the concept, and each one of your pieces has so much of the idea and concept of what you're working on. That this is the thing that strikes me most, and always has with your work. We have a lot of fun talking about it, but the truth is that you've got so much thought into it before it is done, which is really what makes your work as extraordinary as it is.
Well, thank you, Wayne. Yeah, I think that Barbara said to me that the design is really what makes my work stand out.
Absolutely. And it always has. The other thing that has impressed me probably more than any other student I've ever had is that you, I don't want to say deviated, but you went off in another direction long before anybody else has done, because you had your own notion of which way you want to go, and you're very definite about it.
Well, you know, it's very, I'm really blessed that I chose religious motifs. I'm not blessed in that the rabbi said organized religion is on the way out rather than the way in. So commercially, I'm not blessed, but I'm blessed in that I never have writer's block, because I always know what I want to do.
Yes.
It's just the question is, how do you want to represent it and how are you going to design it? But that's the fun. That's the fun of being creative. That's the fun, right? So if I know that one of my Islamic pieces is going to be Muhammad on the horse flying over the skyline of Jerusalem. Okay, that's going to be one of the pieces. I already know it.
Yeah.
So you know, how do you draw that? How do you conceive that? How do you make that carvable? That is just so much fun. I know some of the
the rest is mechanical.
The rest is mechanical.
The intellectual part.
You're absolutely right. So when
your thought process, but to get to that, and the execution is just a mechanical device.
That's right. And so when I say to Barbara, you know, chip carving is not rocket science. I learned it in 2 days with Wayne as my teacher. She says, she gets mad at me. She says, no, but you know, you always put yourself down. Well, it's true what Wayne is saying. The carving is really just the mechanics. It's really the coming up. And I think that's what I really wanted to spend more time tonight than anything. I think I did. It's really the design, it's really the thought process, what I was trying to accomplish in each piece. And I'm glad that you really spent the time listening to what I had to say. Barbara was saying that I recently had some time where I was in a park in Fairfield, and I set up some easels with, you know, big carvings, you know, 24 inches and big carvings. And nobody looked at them. And Barbara said, well, you know, because your topics are not people think that people are interested in. I said, no, that's not true at all. I could have had naked men and naked women each handing out $100 bills on the easel, and nobody looked because there was really no curiosity in what was going on.
That's sad, though.
So that is, so having seen 30 years of installations at the library, I have experienced the same thing. I have been in a room with the finest pen and ink sketch, large 3 foot by 3 foot sketches of private homes, and some of them were like the Greenwich Hospital. And I've been in a room with very smart people, and they don't even turn around and take in what's behind them. So what I've learned by that, I don't know the answer, is people have not developed a curiosity about what, they're so myopic that they just look within their own, or their mind is not open to what's right near them. And I don't know the answer to that.
Right.
Any other, Wayne, did you want to say something?
Marley's keeps handing me notes. She's here, and you think I come up with these marvelous explanations and so forth. It's all Marley's handing me these notes. Like, you know, I really don't know what I'm doing here. But so she expresses herself is that you really have become an artist. But that was a long time ago. She wants to make sure I said this. So this is Marley's voice coming through me.
I'm married. I understand, Wayne. What did the boss have to say, Wayne?
Yeah. Oh, I thought she was coming this way, but then, you know, she wanted to make sure that I get to say everything about you. But you really have found your niche. You have created your own style, and you have your own methods and so forth. I can really see, anybody that spends any time just looking at it, you can see there's a lot of thought in what you're doing. This is what I was saying in the first place.
That's Molly's idea, though.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, here comes another note. And,
all right, well, in the meantime, Jocelyn. Joss, unmute yourself,
I just wanted to say I'm so impressed with your graphic design skills, Harvey. This is not simply carving. As Wayne is saying, you are a graphic designer, an artist. It's so impressive, really impressive.
Thank you.
What would Mr. Thomas have to say if he...
Oh, he's smiling down from heaven. You are
those of you that have heard me over the years talk about Mr. Thomas, my chess partner, well, that beautiful young woman who was talking is Mr. Thomas's daughter. And we all know that Mr. Thomas would be smiling in heaven because Jocelyn and Barbara did not have a relationship until after Mr. Thomas died. The relationship was just between me and him. And after he died, Barbara and Jocelyn became friends. And we know he's smiling in heaven, right?
Yes. But he talked endlessly about your carving.
Yak last night, right, Jocelyn?
Yes, but Dad talked endlessly about your carvings, and he, you know, only showed me a small portion. And I have one that says Shalom that was at his house. That's now my house. And you are so talented with coming up with the designs.
Thank you.
And executing what's in your head onto the wood. It's fantastic.
Right.
Yes. Right. Miriam, did you want to say something?
And I want to say thank you so much for including me. I've learned so much. I had no idea how you did what you did. And it has been so marvelous and a blessing to learn how you bless every piece that you do. And it's just been wonderful to learn.
Was recently ordained and is now a rabbi. And so how did I do, Rabbi? All right?
You did great. You did great. And I also was in kindergarten Mechina when I started.
That's right. So
Ruben, did you want to say something?
I actually have a question for you.
Yeah.
How difficult was it to learn when you're working with the leather, the pressure, because you didn't want to go too deep and rip the hole. So
Did you
did you
practice
use
a lot?
scrap?
Well, my first piece, which was that 5 foot by 7 foot Torah, I cut through the back a lot more.
You didn't
I
talk about
I
what
don't
that
think
was.
that I've cut through the back on this Abraham's gift at all. So it's a question of touch, and the more you do it, you know, if that Torah took me 100 hours to
You
do,
didn't tell what that was.
I said I did a 5 foot by 7 foot Torah back in 2017.
You
So
did
that's
practice on scraps first? You went
Oh,
right
yes,
to it?
yes, of course. I practiced for hours and hours and hours and hours on scraps first. But it's, you know, it's a question of feel. And, you know, you have to hold your knife at a certain angle, obviously.
And Mara does beautiful artwork herself, right? She made for my ordination the most beautiful tzedakah box from, I don't know, what would you say, glass, but
Ceramic.
so
It's a
it's-
glass box. It's a really
no,
just a white
but
box.
you,
so-
but you make it from broken glass that you then create the most beautiful things from.
I had to find a hobby because he paints.
There
That's
you
right.
go.
And I was going to say, and Ruben, his house is filled with beautiful things. And he writes children's books as well. There's so much talent in this room, right?
Ruben, did you want to say something? Or,
I did. I
Yeah.
wanted to say to anyone who has the opportunity to go to the library to see the installation of this, it's remarkable to see the work in real size and to see it to full scale, and then even more so to see it, the volume of it, and to see the progression of it, and to walk among the pieces. It's absolutely breathtaking.
Thank you, Ruben. It is in the Eastern Library until Christmas Day. So,
Great.
If it
Right.
wasn't COVID, I'd say come visit, sleep over, and we'll go to the library. But now it's a little tough.
Does Marley's have anything else that she wanted to say?
You know, tell everybody when the library is open till 7 o'clock on Thursdays and never open on Sunday. And
Never on a Sunday.
Never, and Saturday till 3. And
All right.
it's mostly 10 to 5.
So. say
Wayne, did you
thank
want to say
you,
something?
and
You're
then
muted.
people
Wayne,
wanna
you're
go.
muted. You're muted, Wayne.
No. Well, on that note.
Barbara,
Stay
and
on.
Harvey, I just want to say, you two are one terrific team. You've done-
Yes, bravo to that.
It's marvelous to see you both together.
Thank you all for
Thank
coming.
you. Thank you
Thank you
for
so much
being
for
such
coming. We
good
appreciate
friends
it.
and supporters.
Oh,
I don't
and-
think we could do anything that we do. Like, you know, maybe it would have been nice if we had all these strangers from the Eastern Arts Council or from the Council of Churches. But at the end of the day, what really counts are that you guys are here with us, the people that are really in our corner, and we love you, and I know you feel the same
Love
way.
you
Thank
too.
you.
Hey, Barbara,
Thank you. Stay well. We miss
Okay.
everybody, and we can't wait for real hugs one day.
the title, The Carver and the Rabbi, was just too much to resist. So- And the concept worked great. So
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Good night. Stay
Night.
safe. Stay
Good
safe.
night. It was wonderful.
Good night.
Bye.